3 years together and 1 year living under the same roof should have made Ethan and Madison unbreakable. But everything began to shift the moment her ex, Dylan, slipped back into the city. What started as a harmless book club weekend suddenly turned into a ritual she never missed, even though Madison had never shown the slightest interest in reading. Ethan tried to ignore the knot in his chest, tried to trust the woman he loved, but every unanswered text and every vague excuse carved deeper cracks into their relationship. And then came the moment that changed everything. The moment Madison looked him in the eyes and said that if he couldn't trust her, maybe they shouldn't be together at all. Ethan felt something inside him break, even before he realized this was only the beginning of the downfall. Madison's weekend meetings with Dylan quickly became an unspoken rule of their relationship, something Ethan never agreed to, but somehow had to live with. Every Friday evening, she would grab her tote bag, toss in a notebook she never used, and say she was heading to book club. Ethan didn't question her at first, but the pattern grew impossible to ignore. She returned home late on Saturdays, sometimes past midnight, smelling of a perfume she didn't wear around him. When Ethan asked simple questions, who else was there, what book they were reading, why she stopped inviting him, she only grew colder. Her answers were always short, clipped, and rehearsed, as if she had practiced them in advance. The more he tried to bridge the distance, the more she carved it wider. The apartment felt strangely calm the morning after Madison walked out, as if her absence drained all the tension from the air. Ethan moved slowly through the space, picking up pieces of his life and sorting them into suitcases. Every folded shirt, every cable wrapped neatly, every drawer emptied felt like reclaiming a part of himself he had lost. He changed the locks that afternoon, not out of spite, but out of a quiet need for closure. For once, the silence didn't suffocate him. It steadied him. While packing, his phone pinged with notifications he ignored at first. But the messages kept coming, from friends, from classmates, from people he barely talked to anymore. They were screenshots, posts, tagged photos, and private messages all pointing to the same uncomfortable truth. Madison hadn't just been hiding her meetings with Dylan. She had been openly lying about them. And worse, Dylan wasn't single at all. He had a girlfriend named Aubrey, someone who had been with him for nearly a year, someone who had no idea her boyfriend was spending every weekend with his ex. Piece by piece, the puzzle rearranged itself into a picture Ethan no longer wanted to look at. Photos from supposed book club nights showed Madison and Dylan alone in bars, not libraries. Messages revealed excuses crafted in advance, jokes about keeping things discreet, and references to memories Ethan was never part of. There were voice notes, too, Dylan bragging to his friends about having 2 women entangled in his orbit, playing one for comfort and the other for ego. The callousness in his voice made Ethan's stomach twist. But instead of rage, Ethan felt something unexpected. Relief. Because the truth, no matter how sharp, was always kinder than the lies he had been living with. He gathered all the evidence into a single folder. He didn't write a paragraph, didn't attach a message dripping with resentment. He simply sent it to Madison with a single line. "I deserve honesty." Then he turned off his phone. The silence that followed was profound. No calls. No apologies. No explanations. Just the hum of his new life beginning to take shape. By evening, Ethan sat on his half-packed suitcase and let himself breathe deeply, realizing that every step forward was a step out of a relationship that had quietly died long before he noticed. He felt the weight lifting, the confusion, the guilt, the doubt Madison had planted in him. Now it was all unraveling, thread by thread. The next morning, he printed his boarding pass to London. The ticket wasn't just a confirmation of travel. It was a declaration that he was done being anyone's afterthought. He wasn't running. He was choosing himself. And for the first time in a long time, that choice felt right. Madison showed up 2 days later, pounding on the door with a force that echoed through the hallway. Ethan didn't answer at first, thinking she would eventually walk away, but the knocking only grew louder until a second voice appeared, her mother. A moment later, a third voice joined in, sharp and irritated, belonging to Madison's older sister. They weren't there to talk. They were there to corner him. When Ethan opened the door, Madison rushed in without waiting for permission, her family following right behind her like a storm surge. Her mother immediately launched into accusations, claiming Ethan was emotionally unstable, that he was having a breakdown, that Madison's sudden disappearance had triggered him. Her sister chimed in, saying Madison told them he was paranoid, controlling, and imagining things that weren't real. Madison stood in the middle, arms crossed, letting her family speak on her behalf as if she were the victim in all this. The performance was almost impressive in its precision. Ethan listened quietly, leaning against the counter, arms loosely folded. He didn't interrupt, didn't raise his voice, didn't defend himself. He simply waited, because he knew what was coming next. When they finally paused long enough for him to speak, Ethan walked to the table and picked up the folder he had prepared, the same one he had sent Madison days earlier. He handed it to her mother, without a word. Inside were screenshots, messages, photos, and timestamps that laid out the truth with devastating clarity. Madison froze the moment her mother flipped the first page. Her sister leaned closer, her expression shifting from indignation to shock. Her mother's face drained of color. The room fell silent, except for the brittle sound of papers being turned. Every excuse Madison had crafted, every lie she had told, every accusation she had thrown at Ethan shattered under the weight of undeniable evidence. Her mother slowly lowered the folder, looking at Madison with an expression that was no longer protective but deeply disappointed. Her sister stepped back, arms dropping to her sides, unable to say a single word. Madison tried to speak, her voice trembling as she attempted to twist the story one more time, but even she couldn't find a thread to cling to. She murmured that it wasn't what it looked like, but the words fell flat. No one believed her anymore. Ethan remained calm, not out of coldness but out of clarity. He had already let go. There was nothing left to argue, no reason to raise his voice, no point in fighting for people who had come ready to attack him without seeking the truth. He simply opened the door and gestured for them to leave. Madison hesitated for a long moment, searching his face for something: anger, regret, hesitation, but found nothing. He was done. Her mother walked out first, followed by her sister. Madison lingered 1 second longer, her eyes shining with a mixture of shame and disbelief, before finally stepping outside. Ethan closed the door behind them. There was no dramatic slam, no final shout, no lingering pain. Just a quiet click, the sound of a chapter ending cleanly. The next morning, he headed to the airport, ready to begin the life that was waiting for him. Madison wasted no time once Ethan boarded his flight. Within hours, she posted a long emotional message on social media, claiming Ethan had abandoned her without explanation. She painted herself as the heartbroken girlfriend, left alone after sacrificing everything for him. The post gained traction quickly, filled with sympathetic comments from people who had no idea what had really happened. Madison responded to each one with carefully crafted sorrow, portraying Ethan as cold and selfish. But the internet has a way of digging deeper than expected. A few people who had seen Madison with Dylan began leaving subtle hints in the comments. At first, their messages were drowned out by sympathy, but screenshots started circulating. Photos from weekends Madison claimed she was at book club suddenly resurfaced. Someone posted a story showing Madison and Dylan at a bar, clearly cozy, time-stamped during one of those exact weekends. Within hours, the narrative shifted. People began questioning Madison. Her earlier theatrics started to crack under scrutiny. Then came the storm she never saw coming. A woman named Aubrey, Dylan's long-term girlfriend, appeared in the comments. Her tone wasn't emotional, It was icy and factual. She posted screenshots of Dylan's messages, revealing he had been lying to her for months while secretly spending time with Madison. She shared dates, photos, receipts, and conversations that aligned perfectly with Ethan's timeline. Every lie Madison had told unraveled publicly. The comments section exploded. Madison's supporters vanished instantly, replaced by outraged strangers demanding the truth. People mocked the book club excuse relentlessly, turning it into a meme overnight. Dylan's name began trending among a small online community, labeled as the book club cheater, a title he absolutely hated but couldn't escape. Clips, jokes, and edits began circulating, dissecting his behavior with ruthless humor. Madison attempted damage control by deleting her original post, but screenshots were everywhere. Every attempt she made to defend herself only added fuel to the fire. She tried blaming Dylan, then tried implying Ethan misunderstood everything, then tried claiming her accounts were hacked. None of it worked. People had already decided she was part of the deception, and the internet rarely forgives with grace. Meanwhile, Ethan, sitting in his new apartment in London, didn't engage at all. He watched from a distance as the truth surfaced without him lifting a finger. The world was exposing what he had lived through in silence. Strangely, he didn't feel vindictive satisfaction, just relief. Back home, the chaos spilled beyond social media. Aubrey's posts gained significant attention, leading to more people coming forward with stories about Dylan's manipulative behavior. Madison became entangled in the backlash, treated as both accomplice and fool. She lost friends, credibility, and the carefully crafted online image she cherished. For the first time, Madison and Dylan found themselves united, but not in the way they hoped. They were both facing the consequences of their actions, dragged into the harsh spotlight together. Meanwhile, Ethan's life continued to move forward, untouched by the storm they had created. Madison arrived in London on a cold, gray morning, dragging 2 suitcases behind her, as if she were moving her entire life across the ocean to reclaim something already gone. She didn't warn Ethan. She didn't ask if he wanted to see her. She simply showed up at the tech firm where he now worked, stopping the receptionist with a desperate, breathless plea to call him down. Ethan agreed to meet her, but only in a small cafe 2 blocks away, a neutral space where neither of them held any emotional advantage. When Madison walked in, she looked nothing like the confident woman who once delivered ultimatums in their living room. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair messy, her expression a mixture of panic and hope. She sat across from Ethan and immediately broke down, apologizing through trembling words. She spoke about loneliness, regret, mistakes, and how she had been confused. She said she didn't realize how much he meant to her until he walked away. Her voice cracked when she grabbed his hand, begging him to listen. Ethan remained calm, almost painfully calm. He didn't pull his hand away, but he didn't respond to her touch either. He simply listened, letting her spill every word she had been rehearsing on the flight. And for a brief moment, she mistook his silence for softness. She leaned in closer, telling him she wanted to rebuild everything, that she would change, that things would be different this time. But then she made the mistake he didn't expect, the final attempt to bind him emotionally. She claimed she was pregnant. The words hung in the air, heavy and calculated, and the expression on her face shifted just slightly, betraying the lie. It was a desperate move, a last weapon pulled from an empty arsenal. Ethan exhaled slowly, looking at her with a mixture of sadness and finality. He asked her one simple question when she found out. Madison stumbled over her answer, unable to provide a date, a detail, anything coherent. Her panic spread quickly, and within moments the facade crumbled. She admitted it wasn't true. She said she just wanted him to stay, to reconsider, to feel responsible for her again. That was when Ethan gently pulled his hand away. He told her he wished her well, that he hoped she found clarity and peace, but there was no path that connected them anymore. Too much trust had been broken. Too many wounds had been covered with lies instead of honesty. He said he had forgiven her, but forgiveness wasn't the same as returning. Not anymore. Madison cried harder, her voice echoing through the cafe as she begged him to at least think about it, to meet again, to talk one more time. But Ethan stood up, placed his untouched coffee on the table, and told her that this conversation was their closure, not a beginning. He walked out calmly, leaving her sitting alone in a city she had chased him into. As he stepped into the chilly London air, a surprising warmth spread through him. He didn't feel guilt. He didn't feel doubt. He felt free, finally. Unmistakably free, from a story that had ended long before she realized it was over. Madison's return from London marked the beginning of a downward spiral she never expected. At first, she tried to pretend the trip had been a misunderstanding, something she could laugh off, but the cracks in her life widened faster than she could patch them. People who once supported her online had vanished, unwilling to associate with the chaos she had created. The friends she thought she could rely on kept their distance, tired of being dragged into her drama. She tried dating again, hoping someone new could fill the emptiness Ethan's departure left behind, but every relationship unraveled quickly. The men she met mirrored the very behavior she once excused from Dylan, lying, disappearing, and treating her like an option instead of a partner. Each betrayal hit her harder than the one before, as if karma were tracing every step she had taken. Ethan settled fully into his life in London, embracing a routine that felt steady, fulfilling, and finally free of chaos. His mornings began with quiet walks along the river, his evenings filled with laughter from new friends and the warmth of someone who chose him without hesitation or hidden motives. He no longer replayed old arguments in his mind or questioned his own worth the way he once had. The past had lost its sting, becoming nothing more than a distant memory that no longer had power over him. Sometimes he would catch glimpses of reminders online, old posts discussing the drama, threads about Madison and Dylan's downfall, but they no longer triggered anything inside him. He simply scrolled past, uninterested, unbothered. What mattered now was the life he had built brick by brick, shaped by clarity instead of doubt. He understood that walking away had not been an act of abandonment, but an act of reclaiming himself. And as he stood on a bridge overlooking the shimmering lights of the city he now called home, he realized something simple and profound. He hadn't just survived what happened. He had outgrown it.